As I have said to you repeatedly over the last number of months and your predecessor, the clock is ticking on the dire situation faced by taxi drivers, such that they feel they have no choice now but to organise yet another demonstration on October the 9th because of your failure to give commitments and assurances about supporting them in terms of income subsidies, extending the 10-year replacement rule to 12, giving a moratorium on the issuing of licences, grants to cover ongoing costs, and a buyback scheme for those wanting to exit the industry, and for disbanding the Taxi Advisory Committee. Will you give those supports and commitments as requested?
Thank you, Deputy. I met with delegates from the 4 taxi representative groups the week before last. It was a useful and productive meeting where I had the opportunity to hear about the impact of COVID-19 on the taxi industry and their proposals how the industry can best be supported through this difficult time. I also undertook to meet again with representatives in the near future once I had an opportunity to fully consider these issues with my department and the NTA, and I confirmed that I intend following through on this commitment as soon as possible. I have no plans to dissolve the Advisory Committee on Small Public Transport Service Vehicles, sometimes known as the Taxi Advisory Committee, at this time. This is because the committee has played an important role in advising my department and the NTA on the issues facing the industry and how to assist it through the pandemic and ensure its future sustainability. In July, following a request from my predecessor, then Minister Shane Ross, the committee submitted a report with a number of recommendations, and since then my department has worked with the committee to examine how these can be addressed. The report has been shared by us with other government departments and has served as a useful basis for engagement to ensure that SPSV operators, many of whom are self-employed, are able to access and to the greatest extent possible the range of measures government have introduced to support businesses through these difficult circumstances. The Advisory Committee, which is established under the Taxi Regulation Act, enjoys a broad membership with members representing driver interests, dispatch operators, passenger interests and official stakeholders such as local government and Garda Síochána. This diversity of representation, combined with members' commitment to having a well-functioning and effective SPSV sector, is a strength in the committee. My department will continue to engage from time to time with stakeholder groups, including driver representative groups, but the Advisory Council has been and will remain the central focus on engagement with the SPSV sector in relation to issues affecting the sector. The National Transport Authority, as statutory regulator for the sector, will continue to engage with the industry and communicate regularly with individual operators, SPSV operators, in relation to the impact of COVID.
Thank you, Minister. The rest will have to be read into the record.
If that can be possible.
Thank you.
Minister, in all that chatter, there's no clear commitments, okay? You've cut the PUP of many taxi drivers who now have even less work available to them because of the new restrictions, and no income subsidy for those that are returning to work is available. So they are caught between a rock and a hard place in a dire situation. No commitments. Will you start to give commitments that you won't cut their pup if they have to stay off work, and that you will give them the income subsidy? You continue to issue licences, incredibly, when the industry is on its knees and there's about 70% less work available for the fleet that's out there. The taxi drivers have about €11,000 on average of costs, which are clocking up all the time when there's no work available to them. They're not getting grant support to that. They've asked for a buyback scheme for those who want to exit the industry. You haven't done it. And then the Taxi Advisory Committee. The last 2 actual taxi representatives left the Taxi Advisory Committee because it's completely unfit for purpose. It doesn't represent the interests of taxi drivers. It doesn't put forward demands that would actually protect their livelihoods and protect their industry.
Thank you, Minister. 1 minute.
Deputy, I can't give the clear commitments here because we have to sit down again with the taxi representative groups. In advance of that, as I said to them, I want to sit down with the department, with the NTA. I discussed this with the NTA this week, and my department had similar meetings with the NTA, and will again next week before we go back to have discussions with the taxi representative groups. So I do want to sit down with them, and having listened to them and listen to what are real critical problems. The industry is in real difficulty like a lot of other industries, and I'm committing here to do whatever we can to help get through this difficult time. But I want to have the chance to talk to them and to sit down with them and go through the possibilities rather than commit in advance at all before my department and the NTA have sat down to actually tease out what is real possible changes. But it's absolutely certain and clear that this government is looking to support the taxi drivers through this difficult time, not just in this city, but across the country. They're a vital part of our transport infrastructure. They have to survive through this pandemic period and come out the other side, and I'm convinced they will, and that we will end up, I hope, with a better service for taxi drivers and for their customers.
Thank you.
It wasn't a good start to cut their PUP payments at the same time when you impose restrictions that are going to even further reduce the amount of work available for them. So you really need to get a move on and give those assurances. They don't want to go out protesting again, but they feel they have no choice because they are in absolutely desperate straits. On the replacement of the 10-year replacement rule, you could just do that now. They do not have the money to replace their vehicles. And saying this isn't an issue that's coming up until the end of the year is not true, because actually they need 90 days in advance to know if they're going to renew their licence for the existing car or a new car or leave the industry, right? So they need to know these things now. And it is clear they have no faith in the Taxi Advisory Committee. They were part of it and their last 2 members left it because it is simply not representing their interests. So I would appeal to you, Minister, get a move on, because they are in a dire situation, and words, tea and sympathy are not enough. They need concrete assurances and real supports to get them through this.
Yeah, and we will act quickly in this, but we need to get it right, and I need to work with the Department and the NTA to make sure that we go back to the industry representatives with clear measures that are doable. Not all of them will be, but wherever it is possible, we will act. And act as well by extending the PUP payments into next year. And if they need to be further revised because this pandemic lasts longer or is severe than we'd expected, government hasn't ruled that out. So there is no shortage of support. That £3.5 billion payments so far in the PUP payments is actually just a part of what has to be done. But yes, I commit to going back to talking to the taxi representative groups again, where it is possible to do practical measures that improve their lot and maintain a proper taxi service, then we will do it. It will not be easy, not every measure will be achievable, but I certainly commit to look and I listen to them with real respect, and we'll come back where we can amend things, we will.